Hello and welcome to this lecture, and in this lecture we are going to learn something about variables. So let's assume that you are actually learning JavaScript to build a web platform or web application which is going to basically display you some kind of stock data. So obviously when you talk about stock data, the most important data in the stock market is obviously the stock price. So what you need to do is that you constantly need to update the stock price for a certain stock. So once the stock could be like for $20, and in the next second the stock could actually jump to $21 or $22 or so. So what you need to do is that you need to dynamically update the stock value every time the stock actually changes. So what you need to do is that you need to have something which is going to hold up the stock price, and it's actually going to update it constantly. So in that case, what we do is that we use something which is called as a variable. So a variable is nothing but it's like a container in which you could store some kind of data. So let's say you want to save the price of a certain stock. So for that you need to have a variable. So in order to create a variable in JavaScript, you type var, which stands for variable, and then you actually need to name the variable as something, and that thing is called as the variable name. So as we are holding the stock prices here, let's name the variable name as price. So we type var price, and this is actually going to create the variable for us. Now once this variable is created, you actually need to end the statement with a semicolon. And now once this variable is created, you could actually go ahead and save some kind of value into this variable. So let's say you want to save the value of, let's say, 20 into this variable. So you simply need to type in the variable name, which is price. Then you need to type in the equal sign, and then you need to specify what kind of value do you want to store into this variable. So let's say I want to store a value of 20. So I'm going to specify 20 over here. And once this is done, we are good to go. Now these two lines of codes are actually going to create a variable named as price, and it's actually going to store the value of 20 into the price. Now this line of code is called as the variable declaration. So essentially we have declared the variable over here, which states that price is nothing but it's a variable. And here this line of code is actually called as assigning a value to the variable. So essentially we have assigned the value of 20 to the variable price. Now in order to check if the 20 value is actually allocated to the price, what you could do is that you could simply print out the value of the variable. So you could type in document dot write, and in here you could specify the variable name. So you could type in price over here, end the statement with a semicolon, save the code, and once you refresh this thing, as you could see, the value 20 just popped up onto the HTML document. So this is how a variable actually works. Now this type of variable is called as the integer variable because we are essentially storing the integer value into it. Now we could also create some other kind of variable which is going to be called as a string variable. So in order to create a string variable, each and everything remains the same. You just need to delete this. Also make sure to delete this, and let's say we want to create a variable which is going to hold up somebody's name. So we type var name over here. So we have just changed the name of the variable, and now to assign a value you type name equals, and as this thing is not an integer, as this is a string, you need to mention the name in double quotes. So I'm going to type John over here, end the statement with a semicolon, and here we have created the variable name which is of the type string because we have saved string into that particular variable. Now in order to check if this John is actually stored into the variable name, you could go ahead and type a name over here, save the code, go back over here, refresh the browser, and as you could see, John appeared right over here. So this is how variables can actually be used to store some kind of data into it. So till now we have studied two types of variables. The first variable was to store integer values. This one is to store string values. So the major difference between integer variables and string variables is that whenever you actually want to save certain kind of string into the variable, you make sure that you specify that string in between these two double quotes like this. And whenever you actually want to store the integer variable, you don't need to mention double quotes separately. You could directly go ahead and save the integer value by just assigning the value to the variable. So one more kind of variable which we are going to learn in this case is going to be the Boolean variable. So I'm going to essentially delete this thing. And the Boolean variable can actually hold only two values. So the Boolean variable could either be false or it could be true. So in order to declare the variable, the declaration syntax is quite similar. So you type var, and let's say you could type this thing as value, and then you could go down here and you could type in value equals true. So this is essentially going to make this variable as true. So when you print this value out, save the code and refresh this, as you could see this thing says true, and you could also make it false as and when wanted. So if you save the code again, go back here and refresh this, as you could see it now says false. So these types of variables are called as Boolean variables, and as we move along in this course you will understand when and where these kinds of variables are actually used. So that's it for this lecture, and I guess we have learned quite a bit of things about variables in JavaScript. So that's it for this lecture, and in the next lecture what we will do is that we will learn something about the JavaScript operators and expressions. So thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.